Then we go for bass. So with the backline for Bullet, we are completely Kemper. Bass is a mono line, and there's not a right lot on. It's the same tone for the entire show. And Jamie, that's a guitarist, he plays it and he digs into it quite a lot. So with bass, I'm using the Optronic, which I love, and I am actually using it on quite a few things. It's not really made for, but I like it.
No, I remember when that came out, and I chatted to Dave McDonald, who's another dLive guy, and he said he was like, it's amazing, but it's all about that emphasis, and it's all about that, and it is. It's like, you know, it's excuse me, bad time to be coughing, isn't it? but yeah, it is. It kind of does that. It's almost like it does the kind of turns it into a almost like frequency dependent kind of peak compressor almost, and it like seems to find that kind of the bit that's sticking out. And again, you can do a lot more with it. Makes the attack and the release a lot more usable than an LA2, which are obviously inherently really slow. It makes it is an amazing compressor. It does way more than I expected it to do when I looked at it.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. That's why like I'm surprisingly using it here on my overheads, ride, like
it is, doesn't it? Because it's just kind of like, as much as I mean, but you see, you know, it's just kind of letting that front edge of the snare through.
Yeah. It's like when, let's bring it back to these, and then if we mute all this. Yeah, it just gets it to sit there for me.
Well, it's doing that nice kind of thing where you still get the transient at the front edge, because, you know, I've been guilty of it in the past, over compressing overheads, and then you just lose the definition. You get that kind of, and you lose the front edge of things. But it's nice because it's just letting enough attack through just to almost accent the snare.
Yeah.
But still keeps everything in control, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly. So bring all that back up. It's like with me, I'm using that on them because. Like I say, this song's a steady song for me to get used to my show, like in an empty room. But this is also probably the calmest song of the set for Jason.
Yeah.
So he's not hitting everything as big and thrashy as he is for the rest. So with bass, anyway, so back to here, and with bass, it's going through that first of all, multiband, which has got a bit of an EQ going on, and
I lean on that big time bass to kind of rein in the what the distortion is doing to it as well.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of full band works on a bass really well, and then the second you start to distort it, you've kind of really got to start digging in with something like that.
Yeah, I mean, with the Kempers, it's like obviously when we set up all the Kempers, it were all set with flat channels. For there, they did it all on monitors.
Yeah.
So it's all built on what they wanted, which is great because it means they're getting what they want pretty much off the bat when we're doing fly shows. If we have to use other consoles or whatever, which luckily enough we haven't had to. No, we have done once in the last 2 years.
It's interesting to say that, because obviously, like, that kind of side of things is, you know, again where I'd normally start pulling, but as far as from an ears perspective, they need all that because that's where the actual note is, and that's where they're going to get their definition. And obviously in an in-ears mix you want to be cutting above everything else, whereas for us we need to sit it down, and it's always kind of like
you need to get it to sit.
100 to 200 hertz thing for me is where it's kind of like, you know, somewhere around about 120, 140, 160 ish, and it's kind of where you get that almost swell when they're really, especially the faster stuff when they're digging in down the bottom end.
So from there, it goes into a bit of an EQ, which is just like, I've got my bass digging into that, obviously.
Alright.
Into that, which just kind of rounds it off, and finishes it off.
Oh, so you're losing a lot of the front end on that then?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. You hear that without? It's just getting rid of that kind of pick noise on the strings. Well, there you go. I can go home now. I've learned something today. I would never have thought about using that on a bass guitar ever.
Yeah, I didn't. But I think I just one day in pre-production thought, right, I'll add it in. So yeah, it seems to work.
Yeah, well, because it's leaving, especially in that kind of that it's leaving that kind of front end free for the drums.
Yeah.
So it's not doing a kind of side chain, but it's the same effect as kind of almost side chain from the drums, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's leaving room for the drums to kind of have that front end.
Yeah, I think since I dialed that in, I've never touched it.
It's amazing. I'm going to go away and
have a play.
I'm going to go away and try it. That's the first thing I've stolen from you.
We'll see the result in 10 minutes time. Right. So yeah, from there we go on to guitars, which if I put it on a bit of a loop over here somewhere. So with Padge, he's a heavy down picker, right? And what we find here is I never thought of using this until I got talking to you one day.
Yeah,
and it changed my life.
It is magic. It does something harmonically.
Yeah.
It's like you've put the guitar through a ton of valves and just cooked it.
Yeah.
And it does the glue thing, but then it just seems to just fill out everywhere. It's mental.
I mean, if we leave...
Well, I don't feel bad about steering your transient enhanced thing then, because you
exactly, exactly. Do it to each other. So without it,
it just adds so much more urgency, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when he's digging in, like you can see it and you can hear it digging into it.
Yeah.
Which I've got that running on both guitars, which we bring it all together. I mean, Matt's not playing on this bit, but I find it just gets my guitars to sit, my entire show, when you've got to sit doing this like Bullet, you're sat at 9900 all the way through.
Yeah.
With my guitars, again, it's just EQ into that and nothing else. And that's the same for both. Then we go into a group. I've obviously tried that at some point.
Yeah.
Then I'm using my graphics, like I say.
That's where I'm doing this.
Exactly.
And it's a more nightly thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm using a graphic rather than actually, because you never want to change the tone of the guitar because that's their voice. It's like asking the singer to sing in a different octave or something, or can you try and sound a bit more like Barry White? That's their voice. Yeah. But I kind of find, obviously, you get, if it's microphones on a cab, you're used to hearing a cab from over there, and you hear this, then all of a sudden you put a mic there.
Yeah.
And I find it the same with the Kempers. No matter how, I'm a big fan of the Kempers, but no matter how much you do to them, they still need work on the back end.
Yeah, they do a bit.
And I think whether it's just from a sound engineer's perspective, but you miss, even though they're profiled with it, I still miss the sound of a microphone on a cab and that. So I always find it's like a little bit of like a really short room reverb and a little bit of kind of pitch thing to spread it out and kind of just emulate that you miss. I've
tried the pitch thing and tried all like that with this band. It doesn't work with Bullet as much for me anyway.
I suppose with Skunk I've got one guitar as well.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit more scope to that. But then saying that, I do always,
Yeah. I mean, I tend to stay pretty, especially with these, I have to stay basic because it's such a lively gig. Not basic, but if I start adding too much to it, it's taking away from what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
It's like their albums, they've got sparkle on vocals and everything, but you've got to try recreate here, there and everywhere. But backline wise, live, there's not loads of sparkles. Like when you listen to it, you're not hearing extreme, effects everywhere. I mean, apart from my little drum swell, that's an added thing I do, like at the end of Piece of Me, like as a big instrumental bit at the end where it's right, cool, punch it up 3 dB and get everybody proper going at it. And when that finishes, it's that big drum swell. That's an added sparkle to me. But like with guitars, like I was saying, guitars have been profiled. They've altered them slightly for their in-ears. Like Matt likes a lot more top end in this area, and like that's what I've done beforehand in the channel. And then typically me on the show day, I'll be hacking away in that area.
Yeah, and it's massively system dependent as well. That kind of all those little bits that
System
I'm doing the same. I've got graphics on all my subgroups, and that's the most kind of, the channels pretty much stay the same, and it's my output processing that I'm using to kind of bring the show into that venue.
Bass guitar, I'm doing everything on channel. It's still sending to a group just because that's how I set up my show files. And then it's just like you can see on each group, there's little alters. I mean, I've loaded a festival file here, which every day when I'm on a festival, unless I've had a diabolical day, which I hope hardly ever, I'll load the same startup file from pre-production and I'll build on that in the morning.
See, I always go from the night before, unless I leave myself a note saying this is awful, burn it, never use it again. I always go the night before, and I reset my output buses, because I'm finding as the tour goes on and the more I'm learning and the more I'm finding out about the artists, things like that, and I'm trying different things, and I'll try that compressor. I don't want to go back to the start, because I feel like unless something goes wrong, my show should be getting better every night,
evolving.
And then I'll reset all the balance on the DCAs and the subgroups, and then I'll flatten the graphic EQs and probably wind out any output compression, and then that's my starting point. Unless last night was
I mean, don't get me wrong,
terrible.
It's not like I do it everywhere. I do save every show, and if I'll always try it. And sometimes I'll go with it, sometimes I'll go with, what I see as my startup, which might change throughout a tour.
For me, it's a good job like that screen isn't coming up on there, because I write myself little notes all the way through. Horrendous, never use again, awful PA, da-da-da-da-da.
Well, no, if I'd have selected them, that's when you see my notes. From guitars, we have a little track bus. With Bullet, the newer stuff has more tracks going on. There's nothing brutal out there. There's little bits of BVs, effects, guitars, and then we have a sub bass which is used in a few songs. If I skip it back to the beginning of that, and then so what you'll hear here. The little bits extra that they've done it studio, and to recreate live, they're doing it that way instead of getting some weird pianos or whatever.
That's not really worth bringing out an orchestra for, is it?
No, exactly. Exactly. And then from there, so my DCA setup is pretty standard. It's labelled kit because I probably just did that automatically when I built the show file 2 years ago and never even noticed it till now.
Good.
So yeah, kick, snare, hat, overheads, toms. Then we've got bass, my guitars and my tracks, and they all go into here, my band, which is my trusty little friend. From this, my mix just sits, like, I'll keep my finger on that throughout the gig, and I'll be just giving it a little bit of riding, choruses and whatnot. Guitar solo coming up from all this. They are dialed in the Kempers to give them the boosts and all that. So if it's not like I need to do it, but I do tend to give them up and down. I'll keep my finger on it if I think it needs to.
Do you not find that's massively environmentally dependent anyway? From moving from a festival to then the next day you're in a horrible tin shed somewhere. One of the big old cattle sheds that you get put in America, something like that, and 5K in the guitar all of a sudden when you're ripping your head off. That's why I never use snapshots. That's why I'm there. Because for me, it's playing the show every night. Because I don't ever want anybody or anything to dictate that this guitar solo at that point jumps up 4 dB or this, because it might have done last night, it might not tonight. It's. I
didn't like that.
We bust it.
There we go.
Cut that bit out. Where were we?
God
knows, I won't listen from the start.
tell you what's really
Guitar
throwing me
solos.
off. This up and down. So yeah, guitar solos. Like how I used to do it when analog and on a certain other console, I'd have on the group I'd have a punching EQ just to lift the guitar in certain frequencies for the solos. Instead of pushing it, I'd do that. But how I find it now, especially with Bullet, I don't need to do that because it's all dialed into Kemper.
Yeah.
So they've got the little booster in the Kemper already.
So you've got to be a little bit careful with compression as well then.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's why I'm saying I'll always have my fingers out there and I'm ready to go.